Again, I'm live. Okay, very good. So back to sobering meditation. Yeah, I think we'll be very sober. We'll fall asleep in this session. Well, it's fine. No, it's just the time of the day. Nothing to do with our meditation. That's how I console myself. Oh, it's just the time of the day. It's the circadian cycle of my body. Yeah. Okay, in this series of mindfulness of body, maybe I can explain a little bit why bother to practice in this way. What is the whole point of it? The purpose of it? In the Buddha's teaching. According to the Buddha, a lot of our suffering arises from certain distorted perceptions or misconceptions that we hold on to, not necessarily consciously, but it's sort of in the background or underneath. These are deeply cherished beliefs or views that we might not even be aware of, and these distortions are a source of great suffering for us. So there are a set of four that is commonly touched on. To perceive or conceive of things that are by nature impermanent as permanent, right? So you can almost imagine, and we don't actually need to imagine, we can look into ourselves, and there are occasions where we are aware that we are holding on to things. We want things to be permanent, to not change. And of course, the reality is changing. So that discrepancy becomes the source of suffering for us. So we find it difficult to accept the fact. We find that we resist the change. Right? So holding on to those distorted perception, misconception becomes a source of great suffering for us. Doesn't mean that if we acknowledge it, we wouldn't suffer, because we still suffer over losses, over changes. No, not all of which are necessarily pleasant, but you will find that we definitely suffer much less. And in fact, beyond the initial shock or change, we are better able to adapt to the change when we do not resist it so much. Right? So one of the distortions is to perceive what is impermanence as, what is changeable, impermanent as permanent. The other one is to perceive something that is not the true source of lasting happiness as such. So things that are impermanent, changeable, I mean, when they are here with us, we can rejoice. We are happy to have it. We can enjoy its company, its presence. But of course, it cannot be a lasting source of happiness if it is subject to change. So if I project this idea, this is my true source of happiness, my lasting source of happiness, and it should stay unchanged, then in itself it's already mistaken. So that is to perceive something which is not really a source of lasting happiness to be so. So that's to project something unrealistic onto it. Yeah. Maybe we can appreciate it better when we ourselves are the recipient of others' projection. Then you realize that you can never live up to those projections. Yeah, expectation is impossible. You're not supposed to change. You say, but I didn't want to change, but I can't help it. So when you're on the receiving end, you have a better appreciation how ridiculous that kind of distortion and expectation are, because you can never live up to it, because it's asking for the impossible. Likewise, then when we ourselves are the one that's doing the projection, then we can better appreciate how we are actually setting ourselves up to suffer, to be disappointed. Yeah. The third one is to perceive something that is, in the Buddhist jargon, is something that when there is no self, to perceive that there is a kind of permanent, independent self. And that is, and put it another way, is to perceive something that is interdependent, interconnected, as something that is isolated and independent. So this has also a lot of consequences. For one thing, it enhances our sense of isolation and alienation. But during this period of quarantine and self-isolation, I mean, I myself, I'm overjoyed. Being an introvert, I absolutely relish the opportunity to not meet anybody at all. But for a lot of people, it's real torture, it's a real suffering, because it strengthens this sense of being alienated, being isolated, being not able to be in touch with your loved ones. And that sense of alienation, isolation is a source of great suffering. But deep down within it, it also reinforces this misconception that we have. We do feel isolated, and we do feel alienated. We do feel unconnected with others. Right? But according to the Buddha's teaching, that is not true in the fundamental sense. We are always connected to others, whether we like it or not. We are always dependent on the conditions we are. In fact, we simply cannot take ourselves out of this whole interconnected system. But because we don't think that way, we don't feel that way. So a change in external circumstances with quarantine and self-isolation, it really brought out this conception that a lot of us have within ourselves, that I'm a single individual, I'm isolated, I'm unconnected. So, and that becomes a source of great suffering. The last one is to hold something that is unattractive as attractive. And this is the one that I have the most problem with, because I think sometimes it's sort of we overdo it, and we tend to have, if it's not something attractive or pleasant to look at, pleasant to be in touch with, then we tend to go to the other extreme, and we have aversion and we find something disgusting. But I like to think of it as so the opposite of attractive is not like ugliness. It's just what it is. It's not terribly attractive, or it's not intrinsically attractive. Different people will have different attitude towards all these different objects. So, like for example, I'm trying to get rid of my hair, because I thought, first I go from a normal hairstyle to one where I clip my hair, and I really like this hairstyle. I have it for 20 over years. So, it's fantastic. Then I thought, well, good, if there's no hair, then I don't have to worry about it, right? So in my case, what I long for another, I'm sure there are many people, it's absolute agony, right? I'm try to have hair, try to grow hair. So having or not having hair, is it attractive or not attractive? It's all relative, isn't it? It's not intrinsic. It's not intrinsically attractive. In fact, I told people it's the secret to looking young. Because if you don't have hair, you don't. My hair is actually quite gray, but by clipping them off, nobody knows, including myself. Then I can fool myself to think that, I still look the same. I still look young. Yeah. So it's the best. It's much better than dyeing your hair, because you don't have to expose yourself to chemical. You just cut it off. Anyway, so those are the four distortions. Impermanence, holding impermanence as permanent, holding what is not a source of lasting happiness as the source of lasting happiness, holding what is interdependent and without any kind of isolated self as something isolated and independent and standalone, and holding what is not intrinsically attractive or unattractive as something inherently attractive. So those are the distortion, and this set of meditation can be quite helpful to help us release those misconceptions and misperceptions, a lot of which has to do with the body, actually, because the mind, our consciousness is not something physical. It doesn't have color, doesn't have shape. You can't see it. You can't exactly. So it's much harder to grasp into the mind. But we have a lot more grasping and a lot more conception associated with the physical body. Yeah. And so, this is the body is actually a good place to start to work on those misconceptions. So this morning we touch on mindfulness of body, to be in touch with bodily sensation, to reconnect mind with body. And we can apply the four aspects of mindfulness: recognition, acknowledgement, inquiry, and nurturing. And we also touch on this one particular meditation, the 32 parts of the body, which I've gone pretty slow, a bit too slow maybe. Because on my own, I tend to do it quite fast. I mean, there's not so much. I mean, 32 is quite a big number, but still, we don't need to take that long. And it's not always necessary to dwell equally on each part. Some certain parts have deeper significance to us, or we may have stronger feelings, then we can stay with it a bit longer. Other parts have not much associations, then we can just skip over it. And also different circumstances bring on different kind of associations and thoughts and feelings. Depending on which part of your body aches more, you might find yourself focus more on that particular part of the body, or certain things happen in the people around you that draw your attention to the functioning of that part of the body. Okay, in the afternoon, we're going to look at two other meditations. The first one is called Analysis of Elements. And this is a meditation not only on, of course, the parts of our body, but the interrelationship between what is inner and what is outer. And it's the appreciation of change that a living body, and we ourselves as living human beings, is actually an ongoing process of change. And that change sort of join us to our environment, to everything else. In fact, to be alive is to be interdependent, to be interconnected, and there is to maintain the cycles of exchange, exchange of physical elements, what we call earth element, exchange of fluid, of water, exchange of energy. And we need to take in energy, we release energy, and the exchange of air, the fact that we breathe. And the day when this cycle stops is also the day where death has arrived. The day when the body stops, the living body stops adapting and changing and having this interchange, exchange, is also the day where it's a dead body. So, and even then, of course, it's still connected, but it's a different process. It's no longer a living process. It becomes the process of inanimate material. But while we are alive as living bodies, we are nonetheless inseparable from our environment, inseparable from everything else. Even when we were to go into space, to stay alive, we need to take our environment with us. We take our environment in the space station, we take our environment in the form of a space suit to enclose a part of that environment, without which we will be dead. So we are inseparable from the environment, and this meditation is very good in terms of meditating on interdependence and to heighten this sense of interconnection and the relationship we have with our environment, with everything else, and help us to overcome various different distortion and misperception. So let me just describe how we're going to do it. So earth, water, fire, air is what we're going to focus on. The meditation in a different context, usually in the context where we analyze the nature of the self, we touch on 6 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and then we touch on space element and consciousness element. So that the 6 elements are one way in which we may break up the self, the person, the individual, into the different parts. But when we focus on the body, then we focus on just the first 4. Earth, all aspects, they are solid, they're dense, that hold their shape and form. So like out of the 32 parts of the body, the first 4 subgroups are all earth element. The hair on the head, the body hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscles, tendons, bones, marrow, kidneys, all the internal organs. All these are the earth elements, right? The solid part of the body. Water element, of course, the fluid part of it, that includes the 12 that out of the 32, the bowel, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, or fat is sort of debatable, but the tears, grease, and so on, saliva, and so on. Then fire element is the energetic aspects of the body. I mean, in the old days, fire is the analogy. Just as they talk about the fire, the digestive fire, there's this notion that even within the body, we have a source of heat, which maintains our body temperature. Or this day, we think differently. We think about metabolism, we think about ATP, ADP, those different molecules that is used in the body as a source of energy to enable all the different activities of the cells and the organs. Yeah. So, and the last one, of course, is air element, which is the simplest, of course, is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. But in the traditional context, air element is also associated with movement and activities. The planes are flying. So in this meditation, I'm just going to invite you with each of the elements to establish this sense of process, a cycle. Usually, I think to myself, I start off this life at the moment of conception as a single cell embryo. Half of it come from well, not half actually. Most of it come from my mother, and then part of the genetic material come from my father. So I start with just one cell. So literally, I came to this life bringing only one cell with me. So what about the rest of the material? I have to acquire this life. So when we are in my mom's womb, then it comes through the placenta, and then later as a baby, from the milk I consume, and for the food which I'm still eating, I plan for dinner. So the food is the source of the physical earth element that we take in, we digest, we absorb, we assimilate. So that's how outer earth element becomes inner earth element. And of course, what goes in also come out eventually. So as I cut my hair, I clip my nails, visit the toilet, the bathroom, shed the skin cells, bits and pieces of the earth element return to the outer. Of course, eventually at the time of death, the whole body will return to the environment in different form. Yeah. So that is the cycle of the earth element. And the important thing in this meditation is to appreciate that we're never separated. There is never one earth element that I can lay claim and say, oh, this is me. I have it since birth or since before birth, and I have hold on to this carbon atom for all these years, and it's really me. Actually, there's no such thing. As they say, every atom of your body will probably have been replaced over a long lifetime, many times. And so there's no one earth element or whatever that I can hold on to and lay claim and say, this is me, this is mine, this is my unchanging self. Yeah. Precisely because it's all in change, in flux, then we can let go of this idea of isolation, of being independent, being static, and embrace this fact that, and anyway, everything is in flux, it's changing, it's a process. Precisely because there's a process, that's why we are alive. The next is water element, the fluid, the water, likewise the same. Fire element, well, fire also includes, since I have the aircon on, the opposite, taking heat away from us, yeah. But of course, the sun is the source of energy in the ultimate sense, yeah, for many aspects of our life, for warmth, for growth of food, directly or indirectly, and also for energy, the fossil fuels and other sources of fuel, a lot of which depends on the sun's energy. So our life is intimately connected with the sun, with the source of fire elements. And last one is air elements. So I'm just going to invite you to reflect a little bit on each one of them. And if you are okay with meditating with the breath, then to synchronize it with the breath, so that breathing in is an opportunity to reflect on how outer elements enters and become inner elements. And breathing out is how inner elements return to the outer. And just as the breath sustains our life, the cycle of earth, water, fire, air elements are absolutely essential to our life, to the functioning of the body. Okay, and see whether we can develop a sense of appreciation of the interdependent, interconnected nature of our life. So that's what we're going to meditate on. So I'm going to invite you to settle back and just and sleep is also a natural cycle, part of the cycle. So if you do fall asleep, then you just surrender yourself to it, And because just as there are times when we are awake, then there are times we are asleep, and this is also yet another of those cyclic changes. Yeah. Okay, so we settle back in meditation. So I invite you to take a few moments, settle into a suitable meditation posture, one that you feel is both supportive of your body and allow you to be relaxed, to be at ease, to feel well supported. Take care that your back feels comfortable in this meditation posture and that the posture has not introduced additional or unnecessary pain or discomfort into your body, especially for your back. So we rest our body in this posture, become aware that the body is resting on a support that feels stable, firm, and solid, to reassure our body that it is well supported, and also to promote a process of unwinding, whereby our body can loosen up and set aside any tensions or unnecessary tightness and contractions. In given time, the body can really settle down and be more and more comfortable in this posture. So we're going to make use of the breath as a support, if that's okay for you. It does not really matter so much, but it's just that by making use of the natural rhythm of the breath, it can really help us appreciate this interchange between outer and inner. Let's start with attending to the breath sensations in our own body. Just allow any sensations associated with the breathing process to come into awareness. So that we are aware and in touch with the experiences of breathing in and breathing out. Don't feel that you have to localize the sensation at one particular spot. Instead, maybe we can notice the breath sensations around the nostrils, maybe at the chest, and maybe also at the abdomen. So let us rest our attention on the breath sensations for a while. Allow ourselves to reconnect with the sensations of the breath again and again, and appreciate the in-breath and the out-breath. Each time when we notice ourselves breathing out naturally, we might want to just add in the word release in our own mind. Breathing out, releasing, we can create an opportunity for our body to release more of those unnecessary contractions and tightness, for our mind to put aside thoughts, images, ideas not connected with the meditation. Coming back to the breath, attending to the breath, especially the out breath, breathing out, see whether we can deepen the sense of release. Release our body so that it can settle back and be comfortable in the meditation posture. And we can make the breath the support of the rest of the meditation. At any point of time, we can welcome our attention, our awareness to come back, to reconnect the breath sensations. And now let's turn our attention to the meditation on the analysis of the four physical elements, starting with the earth element. Breathing in, see whether we can be in touch with the inner earth element, or the solid parts of our body, the hair, the skin, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, the various organs. And we can wonder and reflect, from where does the raw material for all these earth elements come from? Did we bring them with us when we come into this world? Or did we acquire it from somewhere else? Breathing in, reflect a little bit, be aware of the outer earth elements and how that flows into our own system and transform into the inner earth elements. Outer earth elements, of course, include the landmass, or the buildings, the trees, the cars, all the solid things outside. But among all of them, it is food that we consume, that we eat, that is digested, broken down, absorbed, and assimilated by digestion. Then outer earth element becomes inner earth element. Coming back to the breath, breathing in, allow images and memories of the past, all the experiences that we have, taking in, eating, consuming. Through the medium of food, we take in outer earth elements, digest, absorb, assimilate to become the inner earth elements. And on the out breath, reflect a little on how the inner return to the outer. Cutting of hair, clipping on nails, shedding of skin, visiting the toilet. Appreciate the great cycle of earth elements from outer to inner, inner to outer. Breathing in and out, simply allow images and ideas to come to mind. Feel free to reflect, think about it if you like. Just appreciate in your own way the great cycle of change of earth elements flowing from outer to inner, inner to outer. And ask ourselves, is there any part of these earth elements, any atom that I can lay claim on and say, this has always been me, this is always mine, this is always myself. When you feel ready, we move on to water element. Same procedure, breathing in, reflect on how outer water elements becomes inner water elements. Inner water elements are all the fluids or the liquid, the blood, the lymph, the saliva, the mucus, the phlegm, the pus, the urine. And where do they come from? Primarily through drinking water, taking in the different beverages. Breathing in, that's how outer water elements flows and becomes inner water elements. Switching over to breathing out, reflect on how inner water element returns to the outer. With each breath, we release some water vapor, some moisture. We sweat, we cry, we urinate, we lose all the fluid and water. And that's how inner becomes outer. Meditate on your own version of the water element, the cycle of water elements. And whenever you feel ready, you can move on to fire elements. Breathing in, be in touch with fire elements within ourselves, the inner fire elements, the heat, the warmth of the body, the energy within us, within each cell of the body. Energy that enables us to stay alive, to get things done, to be awake, to be aware, to be conscious. Breathing in, reflect on where fire elements come from. How does outer fire element flows in to become inner? First and foremost, the energy comes from the sun. And we take in mostly through food, plant or animal based. Digest the food, absorb the nutrients, absorb the energy, store or transport it to all parts of the body, to every cell, to sustain our life. Breathing out, inner fire element returns to the outer. We can reflect a little on how this happened. Each moment we radiate heat. Each moment we move, we stay alive, we consume energy. Energy transformed by the cells into movement. for growth, for repair, for reproduction. Energy we use to sustain a constant body temperature. So reflect on the cycle of fire elements. So which of these fire elements I can lay claim on, I can point to and say definitively, this is me, this is mine, this is my unchanging self. And then lastly, air element. Breathing in, appreciate that fresh air flows in, filling up our lungs, bringing us fresh supply of oxygen. Outer element becomes inner element. Oxygen that is taken up by the blood, pumped by the heart, to every cell in the body, supplying each cell with life-giving, life-sustaining oxygen, and picking up on the waste, the carbon dioxide transported once again by the blood, through the heart, back to the lungs, releasing it into the cavity, breathing out. Inner element return to the outer. Breathing in and out, can we point to any molecule, any atom of air element and lay claim and say, this is definitely me, mine, this is my unchanging self? So as we continue, resting our attention on the breath, stay in touch and aware of the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. In your own way, meditate on the great cycle of the four elements, from environment to our body, from our body back into the environment. See if we can appreciate the interdependent nature of our living body. So coming back to the breath, see if you can, resting attention again and again on the breath to appreciate the interchanging, interdependent nature of the body of four elements, both inner and outer. And in your own way, see if we can appreciate the great cycle of change that is happening at every moment between our body and the environment. And in the midst of change, there is nothing here that we can lay claim, we can hold on to, we can use to resist change. There's nothing here we can claim as definitely me, definitely mine, definitely a part of an unchanging self. It's always a bit challenging to meditate at this time of the day. We can just surrender to it and quite peaceful. So, and of course, the most important change, the most powerful and really affect us and those around us will be the change of death itself. And Buddhism is well known for its discussion on death, cultivating an awareness of death, and which is really about helping us to face this fact of life, or the end of our life, so to speak. And it's probably for a lot of people who are not used to it, it's a shocking thing to do, to deliberately think about death and meditate on death, to cultivate an awareness of death that is not one of fear or anxiety, but one of recognition of this particular aspect of our life, fact of life. Over how many? Probably 30 years now since I started studying Buddhism. I have to say that even without doing a lot of intensive practice and meditation, just by the fact of constantly hearing about death through the teaching, almost as if you cannot ignore the fact because it's been said so many times, it does actually help me deal with death within my own life. Simply because so it's talked about so often that you cannot say that you are surprised by death. Still don't like it, but it has sort of sunk in a bit. It has made an impression. It has created a space a place in my mind, in my thinking mind, that is something to be expected. It has a rightful place in the scheme of things, and that really helped a lot when dealing with the different aspects of death of people close to me, death of even the possibility of my own death. Having said that, I'm quite alright to feel great fear and dread. I have experienced that fear before, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that we have to be unfeeling or unmoved. And we can experience fear. It's just a matter of how we relate to it. That's all. So the last meditation is, of course, a confrontation in a very peaceful way with the fact of death itself, which is also one subject matter where we have a lot of denial, we have a lot of resistance, a lot of issue with, but nonetheless, it's something that we can't escape or run away from. Even the Buddha himself, manifests physical death. So we have to face it one way or another. It's better to do it prepared than unprepared. And the last contemplation of mindfulness of body is on the death itself. We are not going to do the traditional one because first of all, involve visualizations, a set of visualizations that might be a bit difficult unless you watch a lot of crime scene investigations and all sorts of CGI generated things. In fact, there was a place, I think in the States, which they specialize in the scientific study of decomposition of the human body. Because the research can be useful for forensic science, because based on understanding the stages of decomposition, the different factors, the different changes, the different kind of insects or animals that's associated with it, they can make better sort of a diagnosis of the cause of death, time of death, how long the body has been there. So I think it's called the body farm. They have this nickname, this place. Sort of a strange name. Literally, I think it's a farmland. Of course, it's fenced up because what they do is they leave, people donate their body for scientific research, and they just leave the body under different conditions, buried, exposed, inside a shed, or just under different conditions, and they do periodic, they monitor it, they measure, they study the different stages. So it's interesting. It's interesting also that surprisingly there are many things we don't know about this whole process of decomposition. I mean, human beings have been dying for who knows how long, but we have never really investigated to get to know the process itself. And so this classic series of meditation, sometimes I can call it visualization, is to visualize the body in different stages of decomposition, which can be quite upsetting, and so I'm not going to do it. I have a different version of it, just to not get myself into trouble. I don't want people to react badly to the meditation. Also, personally, I'm not very good at visualization, but the whole idea of this meditation is from the teaching. It says, if I go to the Chana ground, this is in ancient India, I encounter this body. whichever states of decomposition. I'm supposed to stand a distance away, just take a look at it, and remind myself, just as this body is in this state, my body one day will also be like this. So it's the reflection on one's own mortality and the fact of life and fact of death. And the whole point of this meditation is to create the impetus for me to actually, funny enough, to make good use of my life, to cherish what I have, and to really think in a very deliberate, intentional way, how do I want to live my life? Because one day I will have to face death, and in the light of death, it really helps to clarify a lot of things, certain things that we might sort of taken for granted or I think are really important. In the light of that, maybe we see differently. We see that, oh, I don't really care much for it. There are other things that are more important to me. Or I really want to make use of this time and my energy to do certain things that is really important to us. Yeah. This, you can think of it as self-induced midlife crisis if you're of the right age. Because most people, they go through this sea change, so to speak, or tree change, or whatever you call it, due to encountering a close brush with death, through cancer or whatever it is, or through suffering serious illness and recovering for it, and then suddenly realize that I've been living my life in a way that I don't really want to live my life, or I want to reassess and maybe spend the remaining time in a more meaningful way. And what the Buddha is doing is not leaving it to chance. It's that you go out and you look at the dead body and remind yourself, this is where I'm going to end up with, so what am I going to do with my life? It's quite dramatic, of course. And it is very dramatic because we are very fortunate in a way we are shielded from this aspect of life. Yeah. But in the ancient India, death is much of a reality. You are confronted with it, and so it really helps to come face to face with it, and it also give us time to work through the fear, work through all our different hang-ups around this topic. Yeah. I just to describe the meditation I'm going to invite you to do. I'm always playing around with different meditation instruction, and I like this idea of meditating on to be in touch with the bones, the skeleton, because one aspect of the decomposition process, you end up with the skeleton, with just the bones, with all the organic, the fleshy parts already gone, weathered away, or in the case of in ancient India, animals, insects have gone through them and left only with the bones, the mineral deposit of the bones. But we have the bones with us. We can be in touch with our own skeletons, and in a way that actually come across as hopefully as something very calming or very settling. After all, the bones are what support us. Our skeleton gives us the strength, the mechanical support that is wonderful to have. We used to have a student here many years ago who suffered from brittle bone syndrome, which means his bones break easily. It's a genetic condition. It affects his growth, affects many aspects of his life. And so when he explained it to me, I thought, wow, even bones cannot be taken for granted. That we stomp around, we jump, we fall, and then we got up. Although I'm a bit more careful now, now that I'm getting old. When I was young, you would think that the bones you are invincible, but now you sort of worry that anytime any fall have serious consequences. I really appreciate after he explained to me his what he has to live with and work with throughout his life. The bones are not something indestructible, so to speak. So, and I find bones are quite interesting object, quite calming actually. Maybe because I'm interested in science, and I used to we do. Well, I probably should go into all the gory details, but we do collect. in fact, I collected some bones. You clean it, you bleach it. Bones are from, of course, living animals. Yeah, and then and they are. In fact, also I have this experience of well, now twice now with my parents, with my mom and my dad after cremation. Then there's I don't know about in the West, in the Chinese custom, you don't pulverize them, you don't blend them grind them into powders. You literally is the bone fragments or just the mineral aspect of it, and you have a ritual where you pick them up, the whole family, each one. We wear gloves, we pick them up, put them in the urn, and it's a bizarre experience. In fact, with my mother, I actually kept 1 or 2 pieces of skull bones. Yeah. And, sometimes I look at it and I have it somewhere. Yeah. Probably a bit of shocker to some people. Because it's so incredible that one moment, my mother, a living person, next moment is just that's it. I hold in my hand a part of my this body, and after cremation, and she's in a way, she's with me and not with me. And likewise with my father also, which I have to care for many years. So I handle his affairs and things like that. And then suddenly the reality really struck. Here I am picking up his bones and putting it away. So bones have a special significance in a sense. And in this meditation, I invite you to touch these aspects of your body with your body sense. Just notice, and you can use visualization, you can use your tactile sensations, and just be appreciative of the skeletons within our body right here. But the meditation is not so much focusing on the skeleton, but focusing on the sense of space around this support. So, but in a way, although I don't actually think of it that way, it's like recognizing that within the skull, there's space, and just underneath the skull, which is where my brain can be. So appreciate the sense of space behind my eyes, sense of space up in the nasal cavity, the sinuses, which you can really appreciate, right? When it's blocked, it's really uncomfortable. The space in the ear canal, the space within the mouth, and the space down the neck, the throat. So it's a meditation really of space defined by and in association with one's own skeleton. And it becomes a meditation as we go through the whole body. It becomes a meditation of how we are here with this really solid part of the body, the skeletons sitting or lying down, and it is embraced by a sense of spaciousness, right? And to rest with this whole experience. I tend to focus more on the spaciousness. Other people may tend to focus more on the boneliness of yourself. Yeah? And we just rest with this image, or whatever image. It can be a visual image. Those people who are very visually inclined, then it will come to you as in a visual form. In fact, skeleton is one of the most common visionary experiences for people doing meditation. I don't know, maybe for people doing Buddhist meditation. I have people who told me, even though they have known nothing at all about this particular type of vision, in deep meditation, some of them just spontaneously have images of their own skeleton. They actually can see their own skeleton as a vision in the mind. And I say, well, that is pretty common in Buddhist meditation. Some of it is induced by a meditation like this. Others is just arise spontaneously. And the interesting thing is, it's not. I mean, once you get used to the idea, you're not spooked by it. It's actually very calming, and very. At least I think it's very calming, very settling, very grounded. It's wonderful to have a complete set of skeletons, don't you think? One thing of it from that, you can rejoice. Yeah, it's pretty good. Later in life, maybe you'll be really replaced by titanium rods, titanium parts, and all sorts of things. Yeah, I find this meditation which is my way of approaching this meditation and the different stages of decomposition, which does end up with skeletons. And in the Mahayana tradition, there is that one is even more shocking. I just tell you, so you can appreciate my version. That one is to visualize, first of all, a little piece of the flesh fall off from your forehead, and then it starts to spread, and everything else fall off and disappear, and you're left with just yourself sitting here in a skeleton. And then you look around you, the ground is covered with skeletons. It's like, for as far as the eye can see, is a whole ground of skeletons. And then you visualize all that reabsorb one bones into another, into your own body, and your own body reabsorb into until once again back to one spot, that one tiny little piece of bone at your forehead. I cannot manage that visualization. I cannot even manage one bone, let alone thousands and millions of bones, which is probably just to talk about it. It's pretty spooky version. Maybe something come out of a modern computer game scenario. But so there is this tradition, in the different Buddhist, even the different Buddhist tradition of reflecting on the skeleton, the bones. Yeah. In tantric traditions, a lot of the Buddha figure are shown wearing different bone ornaments. That means ornaments made from bones. And there's a practice called che in Tibetan tradition, which means cutting. And here you make use of a human thigh bone and made it into a trumpet, and you blow on it as part of your practice. Che is a scary practice because you do it at a cemetery, and you blow the thigh bone trumpet, and you play the drum. You summon the spirits in the cemetery to come to you, because you're going to offer them your body as through visualization. You offer your body as food. It's a practice of overcoming our attachment and grasping a self, and the fear that come out of that grasping. Right? So put in this background, you take my meditation as pretty mild and gentle and soothing. So there is a long tradition in Buddhism to reflect on the body, including the skeleton, the bones, not for some morbid reason, but really to drive home and get us to touch the bones is the most solid part of our body. And this is the solid reality of our life. This is it. This is what our life is all about. And to cherish the time when we are still alive and kicking, and to enjoy the moments, and to make use of this time that we have, which is limited, in a way that is most meaningful and purposeful to ourselves. And we need to be reminded about it, because we are creatures of habits and routines, and we tend to be complacent, so we tend to settle into a certain routine, and then that's it. And then one day we suddenly wake up and we realize that this is it. This is my last day. Time is running out. And what have I done? I forgot. So in order to avoid that, it's good to be reminded. And I mean, it doesn't mean to make us anxious, but to really cherish each moment and to live our life in the way that is most enjoyable and most meaningful for ourselves. So I'm going to invite you to do this meditation of, I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to call it meditation on your skeleton, but it's a meditation on space, actually. Thich Nhat Hanh has a version of this. Imagine yourself as a skeleton lying down on the great earth. I really like the version. At least what I remember of it. It looks like you're just a whole bunch of bones, bleaching under the sun, lying on the ground, and slowly turning to dust and return to the earth. Anyway, let's give it a try and see what comes out of it. So take a few moments and just settle yourself back into a suitable meditation posture. Be in touch with the sensations beneath your body, at the points of contact between your body and your seat, your body and the ground. Try to sustain that contact, which is our contact with the great earth, with the ground, and feel that the earth is here to hold us up, to support us. And it is provide a very stable foundation upon which we can rest our body through this posture. And allow that message to somehow get through to our body, to our brain, and help to promote a sense of unwinding. Given time, gradually our body can actually put aside, release unnecessary contractions, holdings, and tensing. Just surrender itself into the posture, allow itself to settle down and be more and more comfortable in this posture. In this meditation, I'm going to invite you to imagine space or sense or be aware of space in the different parts of the body, in and among our bones, our skeleton. So much so that we become keenly aware of the space outside of the body, outside of the bones, enclosed by the bones. And eventually we may even be aware that the bones themselves are not as solid as they look like. They too are full of spaces of the bones, a living structure, full of cells that enable them to grow, bones to grow, to repair, to mend themselves, to change and adapt to changing conditions of the body, changes in the use of the body. So let's start from the crown. And see if you can imagine, sense right beneath your skull, there is a space between your forehead and the back of your head. See if you can imagine or get in touch with the vast space within, space that allows the brain to be here, to reside. Focus on that space. Imagine it, be aware of it. The space just underneath your skull. Be aware of the space between your eyes, behind your eyes. One that allows you to relax any tension in the muscles around your eyes. There's lots of space here. There's no need to tighten the muscles, no need to tense up the eye muscles. Just allow them to relax in and among that space. Remind yourself, imagine the space in your nasal cavity, your sinuses. Breathing in, precisely because there's space here. Air can flow in freely, easily, smoothly. And air can flow out just as smoothly and easily. Be aware of the space in your ear canal. Space that allows sound to be transmitted, conducted down the ear canal, all the way into the eardrum, via the ear, the bones in your ear, deep into your head. There's space also in and among your ears. Imagine or sense the space in your mouth cavity, from the upper palate all the way to the roots of your tongue. There is space here as well, within the mouth cavity. Don't have to do anything. Best if you can, persuade your face, yourself to relax, release any tension. All we need to do is just to be in touch with a light touch in touch of the space within ourselves, in and among the bones, the skeleton. Breathing in the space along our windpipe, our trachea, that allow air to flow into the chest, into the lungs, allow air to exit the lungs, the chest. Sense that space along your throat. Be aware of the space here in your throat, supported by the neck, the vertebra of your neck. And here not only air can flow up and down, it's also where we have the esophagus, where we can swallow food and drink and water, and allow food and water to flow from outside to the inside. Rest your attention on your shoulders, on the right shoulders. Be aware of the sensation of the right shoulders. See if you can imagine and sense the space here, in and among your shoulder bones, your collarbones. There is space among the bones, so much so that the muscles can be attached here, can function here. See if you can appreciate and imagine the space at your right shoulder. Space defined by the bones, space surrounding the bones, space surrounding your right shoulder joint, a ball and socket joint, which allow movements of your arms. Follow it, you let your attention follow your right arm, moving downwards into your upper arms. Appreciate the space surrounding your arm bones, the humerus, the space occupied by the flesh, by the skin, enclosed by the skin. There is space here at your arms as well. Moving down to your elbow, the elbow joint. Likewise, appreciate the space around the joint, that allow movements. Just imagine there's space here, even if you cannot sense it. Imagine the space surrounding the bones, the joint, space inside the joint itself, which is all filled up with fluid, lubricating the joint. If you like, you can even visualize and imagine space within the bones themselves, occupied by the cells. Moving down to your right forearms, appreciate the space in and among the bones, the ulna and the radius, the two bones in your forearms. Down to the wrist, appreciate the space among the bones at your wrist. It is precisely when there is sufficient space that the nerves are not compressed, the blood vessels can flow, can function normally. And extend your attention when you feel ready into your right hand. Appreciate the space between the fingers. Space between the joints, at the joint, among the digits, the bones in your fingers. Rest your right arm comfortably on the supports. Surrender the weight of the bones and all the other structures to gravity. Allow it to rest here and be at ease in and among the space. Switching over now to the left shoulder. Be aware of the space among your left shoulder blade, your left collarbones, and your left shoulder joint. Among all those powerful muscles at your shoulders, there must be space here in order for the muscles to function, to allow for movement. Appreciate the space at the left shoulder joint, ball and socket joints. They allow for freedom of movement of your left arm. Let your attention follow your left arm. Appreciate the space surrounding your left upper arm bone. Visualize that space if you like, all the way down to the left elbow. Appreciate the space at the joint, inside the joint. Continue at your own pace, down to the left forearms. Visualize the two bones here, the ulna, the radius. Appreciate the space in and among them. Coming back to your body, continue down to the left wrist. Imagine the space in and among the small bones at your wrist. Space that allows nerve and vessels to pass, to bring nutrients and signal to and fro your hands and the rest of the body. Moving into the hands, appreciate the space between the fingers, in and among all the bones here. And now that we have arrived here, give permission and rest the weight of all the bones in our left arm and hand, along with all the other structures. Rest that weight comfortably on the physical support. Surrender that weight to gravity. Coming back to the chest, breathing in and out. Be aware of the space in among the ribs, the backbone, space for the lungs to expand and contract, space to hold the vital organs such as the heart. Space in front, to the front of the body, space to the back of the body. Surrounded by the rib bones, supported by the vertebral column at the back. See if you can imagine and sense your chest from this perspective of space in and among bones. The attention flow downwards to the abdomen, all the fleshy part of the body enclosed by powerful muscles here. The only solid bone is in the backbone, the lower backbones. And all the rest of the organs, all the structures enclosed within the skin and muscles. There must be plenty of space here to accommodate all of them. Attention descend to the pelvis, following the backbone down to the sacrum, the coxal, tailbone. Sense and appreciate the bones of the pelvis, the space enclosed by it, defined by it. Imagine there are plenty of space here at your pelvis, at the pelvic region, to accommodate, to support all the various organs and structures and muscles. And rest that weight of your pelvis comfortably on your seat or on the ground, and surrender it to gravity. From the pelvis, focus on the hip, the two hip joints. Let your attention dwell here. Appreciate the space at your hip joints. Imagine plenty of space that allow free movement of your legs relative to the pelvis. Another ball and socket joint. And let your attention wander down both legs at the same time. Down your upper legs, appreciate the space surrounding bones, all the way down to the knee joint. Appreciate the space in and around your knee joints. Allow freedom of movement. Continue down your lower legs. Continue with the practice of visualizing, imagining, or sensing space surrounding the bones in your lower leg, all the way down to the ankle joint. Imagine space in your ankles, vital for movement. And then continue into both feet. Appreciate the space between the toes, between the toe bones. And rest the weight of all these bones in your legs comfortably on the floor or whatever physical support they are on. And surrender that weight to gravity. So rest all our bones in the skeleton, the weighty, hard, solid part of our body, to provide mechanical support and protection. Rest the whole skeleton comfortably in this posture, on the seat, on the ground. Appreciate the space in and among all the bones, defined by them, surrounding them, enclosed by them. Rest our mind here with the bones, with the space, with what we sense through our senses or visualize with our mind. Just rest here and be still and be at ease and at peace. And unlike the previous meditation, where there's lots of movement, lots of changes, lots of coming and going, here in this meditation, appreciate the stillness, the lack of movements, lack of motion. Just solid bones sitting here, resting here, surrounded by space. And then having died, we can come back to life again. We can start with the breath. Be aware of the breath sensations flowing, breathing in and out, the space in the chest, surrounded by the ribs. Breath is a sign of life. And in among the space, on the skeleton of ours, we can be aware of all the other parts of the body, the muscles, the tendons, the skin covering it, the vital organs functioning right here and now, ensuring our health, keeping us healthy, keeping us physically well and happy. And all the parts of the body we have surveyed previously, all present here, in and among the space, in and among the bones. And this is our body, still alive, still kicking, still inseparable from the environment, the great cycles of earth, water, fire, and air. And let's conclude the meditation by dedicating anything positive, anything helpful, dedicate the positive momentum towards the fulfillment of our wishes, our aspirations. What is it that we want to do that is very meaningful and purposeful to us? What do we want to do with the remaining time we have in this life? Oh, dying in this way is pretty peaceful, isn't it? There's a whole bunch of bones resting on the chair or on the ground. Well, for us it's peaceful. For those who discover us, may not be so peaceful. But I quite enjoy this meditation, especially the sense of space, because I find that very calming for the mind. Which is why I like this variation. So instead of focusing on the parts or the bones or whatever it is, and you might get scared after a while, maybe not, but the space is very liberating, very open, very spacious. So I remind myself, especially when sometimes we get very caught up in thinking, and, the thoughts are very narrowing, sort of constricting. So this has the opposite effect. Okay, so we are quite sober now. We've done quite a bit of sobering meditation. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a good, enjoy the rest of Sunday. Thank you.